Are you thinking about pitching your invention on Shark Tank? You better believe the sharks will ask you one key question. Do you own the IP? Hi, I'm Steve Aycock, a patent attorney, and I help inventors protect their ideas and turn them into real businesses. And I've had several clients try out an audition for Shark Tank, and I made some tips today that I think will help you if you're interested in, getting your new business or product onto Shark Tank. And today I want to share 5 tips with you. These are my top 5 patent and intellectual property tips for inventors who want to impress the sharks and protect your profits. Tip number 1, always file at least a provisional patent application before going public. Once you pitch on TV or online, it's considered a public disclosure, and your patent rights could be affected by this. So you want to always have at least a provisional patent application on file. This gets you the patent pending status and also gives you that initial protection of having it on file before you make your idea public. So keep that in mind on there. And tip number 2, don't forget about trademarks. Your brand name, logo, slogans, taglines should all be protected. And a good trademark is valuable IP that can help you get long-term potential from your business, and it also helps investors see that you value your brand. The third tip I have for you, tip number 3, is to know the IP types. This means you need to know the different patent types. There's utility patents and design patents. You need to know about trademarks. You need to know about copyright. You need to know about trade secret. And you also need to know how to use non-disclosure agreements effectively. All of these different forms of intellectual property protection can come into play for your business. And so you want to know those types. My 4th tip for you is to do a patent search. There's videos out on how to do patent searches, and I can give you some tips on that as well. I may do a video on that. So subscribe to the channel if you want to see future stuff where I do a video on patent searching. But in a nutshell, don't initially assume that your idea is unique. You probably have a good idea, but you want to check it out and make sure there's not something else out there like it. And patent searches don't have to be complicated. Google has an online patent database you can search for free. And another patent search tip that I like to give people is to use Google, the regular Google search, but do the image search. And that can often show you if there's a similar product just by the way it looks. And of course, we are very quick at looking at images and telling if they're similar or not. In fact, most people would be much quicker at that than reading through some patent documents. So I like to do an image search as well in Google, and that's just kind of a quick and fast way just to give you an idea of, something's out there. So when you're on Shark Tank, the sharks may ask, have you done a search? Are you infringing anyone else? And so there's a couple types of patent searches. One would be a patentability search, and that's the search you can tell, have you done a search to see if you're likely to get a patent? Infringing anyone else goes into a kind of search called a freedom to operate search. And that's a special kind of patent search that can be done. And if you have questions about that, leave me a comment and maybe I can do a video on the types of patent searches that are available. But those are 2 things the sharks may ask you about. Number 1, can you patent it? And number 2, if you make this product, will you infringe someone else's patent? So be ready to answer those questions. And finally, my final tip for you in this video, or next to the last one, I'd say, tip number 5 is don't oversell your weak patents. Just saying you have a patent isn't enough. The sharks are going to want to kind of look at it and dig into how strong is that patent. Because like most anything, there's strong and weak versions of it. And it's not to say that weaker ones are not valuable. Maybe they are. Maybe it was made weak for a reason. And stronger ones, of course, would tend to be valuable. But you need to be able to explain what your patent covers, and that's in the claims, and why that matters to your business. So you want to tie in your claims to the business itself, and that's important. Because if the protection is too narrow, competitors can easily get around it. And the sharks will know that. But also, if your protection is too broad, this is something people don't think about, is that if your protection is too broad, potentially your patent has a weakness as well, in the sense that it may be invalid. And so you want to have a patent that's maybe gone through some challenges at the patent office with the examiner. You've overcome them and the patent's issued, and you feel comfortable about it. But know where you're at in terms of strength on the patent. If you're still just patent pending, of course, then you could just kind of talk to the strength of the claims that you're seeking to patent. You won't really have an idea about the patent yet until you get through the process. Okay, tip number 6, make sure you own your IP on paper. So if a contractor helps you develop something, you need a signed IP assignment agreement with that contractor so that you own the IP. Because believe it or not, in the case of patents and copyrights, simply having paid that person to do something for you does not mean you own it. And this is not an intuitive aspect of US IP law. In fact, most people would think just the opposite. If you paid for it, it's yours. You really need to have this all down on paper, that you own everything. If you've had partners in the business, it needs to be clear that the business owns everything. The IP ownership needs to be very clean. The sharks will look at that, and also other investors. So this video is, about the Shark Tank and the sharks and all, but you can also apply this generally to other investors. These are the kind of things they're going to look for. And so owning the IP on paper is important. So you want to make sure you do that. Investors don't want surprises, and they want clean ownership, and they don't want any legal challenges to ownership. They don't want any lawsuits. So you want to make sure you've got all your ducks in a row on the IP ownership aspect. So I also am going to include a link in the comments here where you can download kind of a free guide with the tips in it for Shark Tank inventors. And this will give you kind of these tips I've put in here and some other stuff in there as well. And that'll be free for you just to help you out with this. So do that, and just remember, whether you're launching a product or stepping in front of the sharks, you want to protect what matters to your business. That's the short version of it. And I also wanted to give you, kind of as a little bonus on this video, I did a little research on the sharks and got some quotes from them on their ideas about patents and IP. And I am going to read from these because I want to make sure I get it correct on here. But the first one is from Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful. He says, "If you don't own the IP, I'm not interested. Why would I invest in something that anyone else can copy tomorrow?" So that's a good quote there. He frequently emphasizes that owning enforceable IP is critical, especially for consumer products. So there's what he thinks about it. From Lori, she says, "A patent is great, but only if it's actually protecting something valuable. Not all patents are created equal." So this kind of goes back to the tip earlier of knowing what your patent covers, and don't oversell a weak patent. And in the beginning, make sure you're getting a patent that actually is going to give you that commercial value. That's very important. It says here that Lori often looks beyond the existence of a patent. She wants to know how defensible and broad it really is. So defensible and broad sometimes contradict each other, but I see what she's saying. She wants it to be a good, solid patent, and preferably pretty broad, so it's got some value to it. That's what she's saying there. Mark Cuban, I like Mark. Here's what he says. "A patent doesn't mean you have a business. It just means you paid a lawyer." All right, that's a funny quote from him. He's openly skeptical of patents as a false sense of security. He looks for traction, customers, and execution over just filings. Well, those are good things to keep in mind for sure. I would say, though, patents definitely add value to a business and giving you that exclusivity, especially for investors. And if you're going to seek to ever sell your company, Utility patents last for 20 years. So a patent is something that down the road could be adding a lot of value to your company, and it's something you would rather have than not have. So, Mark has his opinion on here, and I do like him. I like how he just, kind of has this plain way of talking. But I would say don't take his advice necessarily on patents here. They mean more than just you paid a lawyer. They mean you have something protecting your business. So here, the next quote I have here is from Robert. He says, it's not just about having a patent, it's about how you'll use it. Can you stop others? Can you license it? So he sees IP as part of a strategic business tool, not just a legal asset. I really like that one because that's a good way to think of patents. It's just something you can use in your business strategically, and you can kind of think about how you want to use it. I've seen patents be used in very creative ways. Sometimes it started out where we have what looks like a patent infringement situation that's turned into a business partnership. They can be used in all kinds of ways. And so it's important to keep in mind that just keep an open mind about patents and that they are a business tool. They're not necessarily just a plain asset of the business, but they can kind of be used as a tool in different ways. Barbara has a unique take here. She said, I've seen a lot of people waste time and money patenting ideas that will never sell. The real test is in the market. And Barbara has a great point here. That's one of the reasons, if you go back to my tip number 1 about provisional patent application, getting one of those on file is not as costly as a full patent, as a non-provisional, but it kind of puts you a placeholder in so that you can test the market to decide, are you going to go on further with some other IP protection? But at least you have that placeholder in place in case the market is good. Because you wouldn't want to say, I don't want to put a patent application on file, only to find out the market goes crazy for the product and you can't protect it later. That would be sad. So I see Barbara's point that she likes market validation, and that is important. But I would say the balance would be put something inexpensive on file that covers you well, and then do your market validation. That would be my take on it. And then here from Damon John, he has a nice quote here about trademarks. A trademark can be just as powerful as a patent. Your brand is your moat. As a branding expert, Damon often focuses on trademark strength and customer loyalty over utility patents. So he has an interesting take on it as well. I would say, you don't want to be in the thing of going, oh, well, I just want a trademark and not a patent, or I want a patent and not a trademark. You want to think in terms of and. You want to say, I want to protect the invention with a patent, if that's applicable, and I want a trademark. And if there's things I need to protect with a copyright, I want to do that. And I want NDAs and that kind of thing. So with IP, you want to think of doing as many forms of protection as are applicable to your business or your invention. So again, my name's Steve Aycock. I'm at Signet IP Law, and I wanted to put this out today to give people tips. So most of my clients love Shark Tank. Most of them want to be on Shark Tank at some point. So this has been over the course of 20 years. They all love Shark Tank. And so I wanted to put this out there to help people, to give you some ideas. If you're thinking about trying to get on Shark Tank, or you just like that kind of thing, here's kind of the Shark Tank approach to patents and IP. So I hope you enjoyed it. Please feel free to subscribe and like the video. Of course, YouTube likes that, but I also would like to do some future videos and have you see those as well. So if you subscribe, you can do that. And if you have any questions, or if you have other video topics you'd like to hear about in terms of patents or IP law, I'd be happy to do that as well. Just leave me a comment about it. I'd love to hear from you. All right, hope you enjoy it, and good luck with your invention.